Sarah Porter's hand trembled as she clutched the doctor's letter, tears blurring the damning words that confirmed what 5 years of marriage had already suggested. The April morning in Hillsborough, Texas, 1875, seemed cruelly bright as she stumbled from the doctor's office, the paper crumpling in her grip while whispers from the women gathered outside the general store drifted toward her like poisoned arrows. Poor Garrett Vance, a voice carried on the wind. Married a barren woman. No heir for his ranch. Sarah quickened her pace, dust kicking up beneath her skirts as she hurried down the main street. Hillsborough was a growing town in Hill County, but still small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, especially the business of the wife of one of the most successful ranchers in the region. The whispers had started as sympathetic murmurs during the first year of their marriage. By the third year, they had transformed into pointed questions. Now, after 5 years, they had become outright mockery, barely concealed behind fans and gloved hands. Sarah kept her head high, though her heart felt crushed within her chest. She was 24 years old, and according to Dr. Wilson, she would never bear a child. The condition she had, something about her womb being misshapen, was irreversible. No amount of prayer, tonics, or treatments would change it. She reached the hitching post where her mare waited patiently. With shaking hands, she untied the reins and pulled herself into the saddle, grateful for the freedom of riding astride rather than side saddle when away from the judgmental eyes of the town proper. "Heading home already, Mrs. Vance," called Mrs. Henderson from the millinery shop doorway. "Perhaps you should stop by the church. I hear praying for a miracle works wonders for women in your situation." The false sympathy in the woman's voice made Sarah's spine stiffen. "Good day, Mrs. Henderson," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Without another word, she clicked her tongue, urging her horse forward, out of town and toward the open country where the Vance ranch lay sprawled across nearly 1,000 acres. The ride home gave Sarah time to compose herself, to practice the words she would say to Garrett. How do you tell the man you love that you can never give him the children he deserves, that his bloodline would end with him, that all the tender moments they had shared in hopes of creating life had been for nothing? The Vance ranch came into view. As she crested the final hill, a sprawling farmhouse with a broad porch, surrounded by outbuildings, corrals, and pastures that stretched toward the horizon. Cattle dotted the landscape, the cornerstone of Garrett's success, and the legacy he had hoped to pass down to sons who would now never exist. Sarah slowed her horse as she approached the house, her stomach churning with dread. Garrett's stallion was hitched outside, which meant he had come in early from working the herd. She hadn't expected him back until sundown. As she dismounted, the front door swung open, and Garrett Vance stepped onto the porch. At 31, he cut an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of the Texas sky after a storm. He had removed his hat, and his dark hair, streaked with hints of gold from hours in the sun, was slightly damp, as if he'd just washed up. "Sarah," he called, his brow furrowing with concern. "Wasn't expecting you back so soon. Everything all right?" Sarah handed her reins to Miguel, one of the ranch hands who had appeared to take her horse, and forced a smile. "Just tired is all. Thought I'd come home early." Garrett's eyes narrowed slightly. After 5 years of marriage, he knew her too well to be fooled by such a transparent lie. He stepped forward, descending the porch steps to meet her. "You've been crying," he said quietly, his calloused fingers gently touching her cheek. Sarah's composure cracked. Her lower lip trembled and fresh tears welled in her eyes. "I saw Dr. Wilson," she whispered. Understanding dawned in Garrett's expression. Without another word, he took her hand and led her inside, away from the curious eyes of the ranch hands. In the privacy of their home, he guided her to the sofa in the sitting room and sat beside her, still holding her hand. "Tell me," he said simply. Sarah pulled the crumpled letter from her pocket and handed it to him. She watched as he unfolded it, his eyes scanning the doctor's neat script. His expression remained unchanged, but she felt the slight tensing of his fingers around hers. "Dr. Wilson says I'll never have children," she said, her voice barely audible. "My womb is wrong, misshapen. He says no amount of treatment will fix it." Garrett set the letter aside and turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Sarah, I've failed you," she blurted out, unable to contain the words that had been burning inside her. "I've failed as your wife. Everyone in town knows it. They whisper about it when they think I can't hear. Mrs. Henderson all but said I should pray harder, as if I haven't been begging God every night for years." "You haven't failed at anything," Garrett said firmly. "But your legacy, my legacy, isn't just about bloodlines," he interrupted, his voice gentle but resolute. "It's about what we build together, you and me." Sarah shook her head, tears flowing freely now. "You deserve children, sons to take over the ranch, daughters to make you proud." Garrett reached up, cupping her face between his hands. "I deserve you," he said. "The rest will follow in its own way." "How?" Sarah asked brokenly. A slow smile spread across Garrett's face and his eyes lit with determination. "We'll build our family another way." Sarah stared at him, uncomprehending. "What do you mean?" "There are children out there who need homes, need love," Garrett said. "Children who have lost their parents or been abandoned. We could give them a home, Sarah. We could be their family." "You mean adopt?" Garrett nodded. "Why not? A child doesn't need our blood to be our child. They just need our hearts." For the first time since receiving the devastating news, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. "Do you really mean that? You wouldn't mind raising someone else's child as your own?" "Once we take them in, they won't be someone else's child," Garrett said firmly. "They'll be ours in every way that matters." Sarah's mind spun with the possibility. "But what will people say? The town already gossips about me being barren." Garrett's expression hardened. "Let them talk. Their opinions don't put food on our table or love in our home. Besides," he added with a wry smile, "half the men in this county owe me favors or business. They'll mind their tongues if they know what's good for them." Despite her tears, Sarah laughed, a wet, broken sound that nonetheless carried genuine amusement. "You can't threaten the whole town into silence, Garrett." "Watch me," he replied with a wink before his expression grew serious again. "Sarah, I didn't marry you for children. I married you because I love you, because you're the strongest, kindest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. Nothing the doctor said in that letter changes who you are to me." Sarah leaned into him, allowing herself to be enfolded in his strong arms. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" She whispered against his chest. "I'm the lucky one," Garrett replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "And we're going to be even luckier when we find children to love. Our family's just going to come together differently than we expected." For the first time since the doctor had delivered his verdict, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't the future she had imagined, but perhaps, just perhaps, it could be even better. "So," she said, sitting up and wiping away her tears, "how do we start building this family of ours?" Garrett smiled, the kind of smile that had made her fall in love with him all those years ago, determined, confident, and full of promise. "I've been thinking about that," he admitted. "There's an orphanage in Fort Worth. Reverend Matthews mentioned it last month when he was passing through. Said they're overflowing with children who lost parents to the fever last summer." Sarah's heart quickened. "Fort Worth, that's only a day's ride from here." 2 days by wagon," Garrett corrected, "which is how we'd have to travel back if we found a child or children to bring home." "Children? More than one?" Sarah asked, hope blooming in her chest. Why not? Garrett's eyes twinkled. This house is plenty big, and siblings should stay together if they can. The enormity of what they were discussing suddenly hit Sarah. Garrett, are you sure about this? Truly sure? It's one thing to say it to comfort me, but raising someone else's children, our children, he corrected firmly. And yes, I'm sure. I've been thinking about it for a while, to be honest. You have? Sarah asked, surprised. Garrett nodded, a hint of sheepishness in his expression. After 3 years of trying, I started, preparing myself for the possibility. I wanted to be ready with another plan just in case. When Reverend Matthews mentioned the orphanage, it felt like a sign. Sarah's throat tightened with emotion. Even while she had been despairing, Garrett had been planning, adapting, finding another way forward. I love you, she whispered, the words inadequate for the depth of feeling behind them. I love you too, he replied. So, what do you think? Shall we take a trip to Fort Worth next week? See if there are children there who might be looking for parents like us. Sarah nodded, a new determination settling over her. Yes, let's do it. The trip to Fort Worth was arranged with surprising speed. Garrett delegated responsibilities to his foreman, Simon, a competent man who had been with the ranch for nearly a decade. Sarah prepared the house, cleaning the 2 spare bedrooms that had remained mostly unused except for occasional visitors. As she scrubbed and aired out the rooms, hung fresh curtains, and made up beds with clean linens, Sarah allowed herself to imagine children laughing in these spaces. Boys with Garrett's determined spirit, girls with kind hearts, all of them growing, learning, and filling the house with the love and chaos of family. They set out on a Tuesday morning, the wagon loaded with supplies for the journey. Sarah had packed her best dress for visiting the orphanage, wanting to make a good impression on whoever might be evaluating them as potential parents. The journey passed in a mixture of nervous anticipation and meaningful conversation. They discussed what age children they might prefer, how many they felt they could care for, and the logistics of raising children on a working ranch. I think I'd like at least one little one, Sarah admitted as they made camp the first night. A child young enough that they might not remember much of life before us. Garrett nodded, stoking the campfire. I'd like that too, though I wouldn't mind an older boy as well, someone I could teach about ranching who might be interested in learning the business. So a little one and an older boy, Sarah mused, smiling. That sounds like a good start. A start, Garrett chuckled. Planning to fill all the bedrooms, are you? Sarah blushed but didn't deny it. The idea of a house full of children, all loved and wanted, had taken root in her heart. Maybe. If the right children come along. They arrived in Fort Worth late the following day. The city was larger and busier than Hillsborough, with more businesses, more people, and a sense of growth and opportunity that hummed through the streets. They found lodging at a respectable hotel and planned to visit the orphanage first thing in the morning. Sarah barely slept that night, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. What if no child connected with them? What if the orphanage wouldn't let them adopt? What if they took children home only to find they weren't suited to parenthood after all? Garrett, sensing her restlessness, pulled her close in the darkness. Whatever happens, he murmured against her hair, we face it together. The Texas Children's Home and Aid Society was housed in a large, somewhat austere building on the outskirts of the city. As Garrett helped Sarah down from the wagon, she straightened her best blue dress and adjusted her bonnet, suddenly as nervous as a schoolgirl before an examination. You look beautiful, Garrett assured her, taking her hand. Any child would be lucky to call you mother. The matron who greeted them was a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Blackburn, who led them to a small office and questioned them at length about their circumstances, their intentions, and their ability to provide for children. We have a successful cattle ranch, Garrett explained. Nearly 1,000 acres, good water rights, and a herd of over 500 head. The house has 4 bedrooms, a study, and plenty of room for children to grow. And you, Mrs. Vance, what skills do you bring to motherhood? Mrs. Blackburn asked, her gaze sharp and assessing. Sarah swallowed hard. I keep a good home. I can cook and tend a garden. I've helped deliver calves and foals at the ranch, so I'm not squeamish about illness or injury. I was a school teacher before I married, so I can ensure the children receive a proper education. Mrs. Blackburn's expression softened slightly at this last revelation. A teacher. That's valuable indeed. Many of our children have had interrupted schooling, if any at all. Most importantly, Sarah added, gathering her courage, I have love to give. We both do. Our home has been waiting for children, and we're ready to open our hearts to those who need a family. Mrs. Blackburn studied them for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. I'll show you the children. But I must warn you, we don't allow people to simply choose children like picking apples at market. The children must also choose you. And for older children especially, that trust can take time to build. We understand, Garrett said. We're not looking for a transaction. We're looking to start a family. Mrs. Blackburn led them through the building to a large room where about 20 children of various ages were engaged in different activities. Some of the older ones were reading or doing simple lessons, while younger ones played with wooden toys or dolls made from scraps of fabric. These are our children between 4 and 12, Mrs. Blackburn explained. The infants and toddlers are in a separate nursery. Feel free to interact, but please don't make promises to any child without speaking to me first. As the matron stepped back to observe, Sarah and Garrett moved into the room. The children regarded them with varying degrees of interest, suspicion, and hope. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the weight of their gazes, knowing that for some of these children, she and Garrett represented a chance at a new life. A small girl of about 6 approached them first, her red hair braided neatly but her dress showing signs of wear. Are you looking for children to take home? She asked bluntly. Sarah knelt to the girl's level. We are. We have a ranch with lots of space and animals. We've been hoping to find children who might want to be part of our family. The girl nodded solemnly. My name is Emma. My brother is over there. She pointed to a boy of around 10 who was watching them warily from a corner. That's James. We've been here 8 months. Our ma and pa died in the fever. I'm very sorry to hear that, Sarah said gently. It must be hard to lose your parents. Emma nodded again. Most folks only want babies, or just one child. They don't want to take brothers and sisters together. Sarah glanced at Garrett, who had crouched down beside her. We'd want siblings to stay together, he said, his voice firm. Family is important. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Really? You'd take 2? If they were the right 2 for us, yes, Garrett replied with a smile. Emma grabbed Sarah's hand. Come meet James, he's smart. He can already do sums and read big books, and he's strong too. He could help on your ranch. She led them to her brother, who stood as they approached, his posture defensive but his eyes revealing a flicker of hope. Hello, sir, madam, he said politely, though his gaze darted between them and his sister. James, this is. Emma trailed off, realizing she hadn't asked their names. I'm Garrett Vance, and this is my wife, Sarah, Garrett supplied, extending his hand to the boy. James shook it, his grip surprisingly firm for a child his age. James Wilson, sir, and you've met my sister, Emma. We have, and she speaks very highly of you, Garrett said. She tells me you're good with books and numbers. A flush of pride colored James's cheeks. I like learning, sir. Our pa was a schoolmaster before he got sick, Emma finished when her brother faltered. Sarah's heart ached for these children who had lost so much. "I was a teacher myself before I married," she told them. "I could continue your lessons if you came to live with us." James's expression grew cautious. "Are you really considering taking us both? No one wants two children, especially not when one's a boy my age. They all want babies or little girls like Emma." "We want children who will fit into our family," Garrett said firmly. "And from what I can see, you two take care of each other. That's the kind of loyalty and love we want in our home." For the first time, a genuine smile broke across James's face, revealing a missing tooth on one side. "Emma and I come as a pair," he said with newfound confidence. "That's what Pa always said. The Wilson children come as a pair." "The Vance children would come as a pair too," Sarah said, the words bringing tears to her eyes as she realized she was already thinking of them as hers. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking with James and Emma, learning about their lives before the orphanage, their interests and their fears. James was indeed intelligent, with a particular affinity for mathematics and a curious mind that asked thoughtful questions about the ranch and the cattle business. Emma was creative and talkative, filling in details her more reserved brother omitted and showing them drawings she had made. As the day drew to a close, Mrs. Blackburn approached them. "You seem to have formed a connection with the Wilson children," she observed. "We have," Garrett confirmed. "They're remarkable children. We'd like to discuss the possibility of adopting them both." Mrs. Blackburn's eyebrows rose. "Both? That's unusual. Most couples who come through here are only prepared to take one child." "We want them both," Sarah said firmly. "They belong together, and we have room in our home and our hearts for two children, more eventually if the opportunity arises." Mrs. Blackburn studied them carefully. "The adoption process takes time, Mr. and Mrs. Vance. There are papers to file, references to check, arrangements to make. It could be several weeks before everything is finalized." "We're prepared to stay in Fort Worth as long as necessary," Garrett replied, "or to return when needed." "And in the meantime," Sarah added, "perhaps we could spend more time with James and Emma, get to know them better and let them get to know us." Mrs. Blackburn nodded slowly. "That would be appropriate. You may visit them daily while you're in the city. If all goes well, and if the children wish it, we can begin the formal adoption process." Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and Garrett spent every day at the orphanage. They brought small gifts, a book of adventure stories for James, a sketchbook and colored pencils for Emma, and shared stories of life on the ranch. They answered endless questions about the animals, the land, and what their lives might be like as a family. "Would we have our own rooms?" Emma asked one afternoon as they sat in the orphanage garden. "Yes," Sarah assured her. "We have 2 rooms prepared already, one for each of you. You can decorate them however you like." "Are there other children nearby?" James wanted to know. "At the orphanage, there's always someone to talk to." "Our nearest neighbors with children are the Hendersons, about 3 miles away," Garrett explained. "They have 3 boys around your age, James. And Hillsborough itself isn't far. There's a school there with children of all ages." "A real school?" James asked, his eyes lighting up. "A real school," Sarah confirmed. "Though if you prefer, I could continue teaching you at home, at least until you're settled." As the days passed, Sarah found herself falling more deeply in love with these children who had already endured so much loss. Emma's bright laughter and James's thoughtful questions began to fill the empty spaces in her heart that had ached for children of her own. Garrett, too, formed a bond with the children. He taught James how to whittle, using small pieces of wood he brought from their hotel, and spun tales of ranch life that left both children wide-eyed with wonder. More than once, Sarah caught him looking at them with a tenderness that made her throat tight with emotion. Finally, after 16 days in Fort Worth, Mrs. Blackburn called them into her office. "All your references have checked out," she said, a hint of a smile warming her usually stern features. "The judge has reviewed your petition and found no reason to deny it. If you still wish to proceed and if the children consent, you may begin the final paperwork today." Sarah's hand found Garrett's, squeezing tightly. "We wish to proceed," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling inside her. "Very well. I've already spoken with James and Emma. They're waiting to talk with you." The children were sitting side by side on a bench in the hallway, their expressions a mixture of hope and anxiety. As Sarah and Garrett approached, they stood, James protectively placing a hand on his sister's shoulder. "Mrs. Blackburn says you want to adopt us," James said, his voice carefully controlled. "Both of us, for real." "For real," Garrett confirmed. "If that's what you want to." Emma looked up at her brother, then back at Sarah and Garrett. "Would we call you Ma and Pa?" she asked hesitantly. Sarah knelt before the girl, taking her small hands in her own. "You can call us whatever feels right to you, Emma. We know we can't replace your parents, but we would be honored if, someday, you felt comfortable enough to think of us that way." James swallowed hard, his composure slipping to reveal the vulnerable child beneath. "Our Pa made me promise to take care of Emma if anything happened to him and Ma. If we go with you, I'd still be keeping that promise, right?" Garrett placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "You'd be keeping it better than ever, son, because you'd have help. You wouldn't have to carry that responsibility alone anymore." A tear slipped down James's cheek, and he hastily wiped it away. "Then yes, we want to go with you, don't we, Emma?" Emma nodded vigorously, her red braids bouncing. "Yes, please. Can we go soon?" "As soon as the papers are signed," Sarah promised, her own vision blurring with tears. "We can leave for home tomorrow." The paperwork took the rest of the day to complete. Sarah and Garrett signed document after document, their names flowing together on the pages that would legally bind these children to them as family. James and Emma were brought in to sign their own names to certain papers, their careful penmanship a testament to their education before tragedy had struck their family. By the time they returned to their hotel that evening, Sarah felt drained yet exhilarated. "We're parents," she said wonderingly as she and Garrett prepared for bed. "After all this time, all the heartache, we're actually parents." Garrett pulled her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We are, and tomorrow we bring our children home." They arrived at the orphanage early the next morning to find James and Emma waiting, their few possessions packed into one small trunk between them. Emma clutched a rag doll that had seen better days, while James held a worn leather Bible that had belonged to their father. "Ready to see your new home?" Garrett asked as he loaded their trunk into the wagon. "Ready," the children replied in unison, their excitement palpable despite the understandable nervousness in their eyes. The journey back to Hillsborough took 3 days with the children along, as they stopped more frequently for breaks and made camp earlier each evening. During those nights under the stars, they began the process of becoming a family, sharing stories, learning each other's habits, and establishing new routines. Emma was fascinated by Sarah's ability to identify wildflowers along their route, eagerly absorbing the names and properties of each bloom they encountered. James peppered Garrett with questions about ranching, cattle breeds, and the economics of the beef trade, revealing a mind that was both practical and quick to grasp new concepts. As they approached Hillsborough, Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. How would the town react to their instant family? Would the gossip shift from her barrenness to speculation about these orphan children? Would James and Emma be accepted, or would they face the same whispers and sidelong glances that had haunted Sarah for years? Garrett, sensing her tension, reached across to squeeze her hand. Remember what we said. Let them talk. Our family is our business, not theirs. Sarah nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. Our family, she repeated, loving the sound of those words. They passed through town quickly, not stopping despite the curious stares that followed the wagon with its two unfamiliar children. Sarah kept her head high, nodding politely to those she knew but not slowing enough for conversation. Explanations would come later. For now, her priority was getting James and Emma home. The children fell silent as they turned onto the long drive leading to the ranch, their eyes wide as they took in the sprawling property. The house came into view, solid and welcoming with its wide porch and large windows, and Sarah heard Emma's small gasp of delight. "It looks like a castle," the little girl exclaimed. James was more restrained but clearly impressed. "It's bigger than our old house," he observed. "Much bigger." As Garrett drew the wagon to a halt in front of the house, the front door opened, and Maria, the Mexican woman who helped with cooking and housekeeping, emerged onto the porch. Behind her came Simon, the foreman, and several of the ranch hands who had been curious about the children their boss was bringing home. "Welcome home, Mr. and Mrs. Vance," Maria called, her round face split in a warm smile. "And welcome to the little ones. I have supper almost ready, and the rooms are prepared just as you asked." Sarah helped Emma down from the wagon while Garrett assisted James. "Everyone," she called to the assembled staff, "I'd like you to meet James and Emma, our children." The words sent a thrill through her, and she watched as the ranch hands stepped forward to greet the newcomers with handshakes and smiles. There was no judgment in their faces, only curiosity and welcome, and Sarah felt some of her tension ease. Maria ushered them all inside, where delicious smells of beef stew and fresh bread filled the air. "Come, come," she urged the children. "You must be hungry after your journey. Let's get you fed and then you can see your rooms." James and Emma followed, wide-eyed with wonder at the spacious interior of the house. The polished wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and large fireplace in the sitting room seemed to impress them as much as the exterior had. "This is really all ours now?" Emma asked in a hushed voice. "It really is," Sarah assured her, guiding the children toward the dining room where Maria was already setting out bowls of steaming stew. "This is your home for as long as you want it to be." That first evening passed in a blur of new experiences. After dinner, Sarah showed the children to their rooms, Emma's decorated with a quilt in shades of blue and green, and James's with a sturdy oak desk by the window where he could read and study. Both rooms had their own wardrobes, washstands, and bookshelves, modest but comfortable furnishings that represented luxury to children who had spent months sharing space in an orphanage. "Tomorrow we'll go into town and get you both some new clothes," Sarah promised as she helped Emma prepare for bed. "And books and anything else you need." "I've never had a new dress before," Emma confided, running her hand over the nightgown Sarah had laid out one of her own, hastily taken in to fit the child's smaller frame. "Just hand-me-downs from neighbors or charity baskets at church." Sarah's heart clenched. "Well, you'll have new ones now. As many as you need." After ensuring both children were settled for the night, Sarah found Garrett in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with a thoughtful expression. "What is it?" she asked, sitting beside him and leaning her head against his shoulder. "Just thinking about how much our lives have changed in a few weeks," he replied, wrapping an arm around her. "A month ago we were still trying to have a baby of our own. Now we have 2 children sleeping down the hall." "Are you having doubts?" Sarah asked, a note of fear creeping into her voice. Garrett shook his head firmly. "Not for a second. It feels right, Sarah. Those 2 children belong here with us. I knew it the moment I saw them." Sarah relaxed against him. I felt it too. It's strange. I always thought I'd need to carry a child to feel this connection, this motherly instinct. But with James and Emma, it was just there, almost from the first moment. That's because being a parent isn't about blood, Garrett said softly. It's about love. And you, Sarah Vance, have more love in your heart than anyone I've ever known. The next few weeks were a period of adjustment for all of them. James and Emma gradually settled into life on the ranch, learning its rhythms and routines. Emma took to following Sarah everywhere, helping with household tasks and absorbing knowledge about cooking, gardening, and keeping a home. James divided his time between lessons with Sarah and shadowing Garrett around the ranch, soaking up information about cattle, horses, and the business of ranching like a sponge. Their first trip into Hillsboro, as a family, was met with the expected curiosity and whispers. Sarah held her head high as she escorted the children into the general store, aware of the eyes that followed them and the conversations that hushed as they passed. "Mrs. Vance," called Mrs. Henderson, the same woman who had mockingly suggested prayer for Sarah's barrenness months before. "I see you've been busy while you were away. New additions to the family." "Yes," Sarah replied coolly. "Our children, James and Emma, we've adopted them legally." Mrs. Henderson's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "How charitable of you, taking in orphans when you couldn't have your own." "I suppose that's one way to build a family." Before Sarah could respond, Garrett stepped forward, his expression pleasant but his eyes hard. "It's the best way, Mrs. Henderson. These children are a blessing to us. We're fortunate they agreed to become part of our family." Emma, sensing the tension, slipped her small hand into Sarah's. "Ma," she said clearly, using the title for the first time, "can we look at the fabric for my new dress now?" Sarah's heart swelled at the word, and she saw Mrs. Henderson's eyes widen in surprise. "Of course, sweetheart," she replied, giving the older woman a serene smile before leading Emma toward the bolts of fabric displayed at the back of the store. As they shopped, more townspeople approached, some genuinely welcoming, others barely concealing their judgment behind polite inquiries. Each time, Garrett and Sarah presented a united front, proudly introducing their children, and making it clear that James and Emma were now Vances in every way that mattered. By the time they headed home, loaded with packages containing new clothes, books, and small toys for the children, Sarah felt emotionally drained but strangely triumphant. They had faced the town's scrutiny together, and while not everyone had been kind, they had stood firm as a family. "Did you see Mrs. Henderson's face when Emma called me Ma?" Sarah asked Garrett as they drove home, the children chattering excitedly in the back of the wagon about their new possessions. Garrett chuckled. "I did. Thought her eyes might pop right out of her head." "It was the first time," Sarah said softly. "The first time she called me that." Garrett reached over to squeeze her hand. "She chose her moment perfectly. That girl's got spirit just like her mother." The seasons changed, summer giving way to fall and fall to winter. As Christmas approached, the Vance household buzzed with excitement. James and Emma, now firmly established as part of the family, helped decorate the house with greenery and red ribbons, their faces alight with anticipation for their first Christmas in their new home. Sarah threw herself into preparations, determined to make the holiday special. She baked cookies and pies, sewed new clothes for the children, and worked secretly on special gifts: a hand-carved chess set for James that Garrett had crafted, and a beautiful doll with a porcelain head and real human hair for Emma. On Christmas Eve, they gathered in the sitting room, a fire crackling in the fireplace and candles glowing on the tree they had cut from their own land. As Garrett read the nativity story from the Bible, Sarah looked around at her family, her husband's strong profile, James's thoughtful expression. Emma's eyes wide with wonder and felt a completeness she had never expected to find after learning she could never bear children. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed with strict instructions not to peek at their presents until morning, Garrett pulled Sarah onto his lap in front of the fire. "Happy?" he asked, nuzzling her neck. "Completely," she replied, leaning into his warmth. "I never imagined I could be this content, this fulfilled. Sometimes I think about how devastated I was that day in the doctor's office, and it seems like another lifetime." "It was another lifetime," Garrett mused. "We're different people now, parents." "Parents," Sarah repeated, savoring the word. "If someone had told me then that in less than a year we'd have two amazing children and be planning to add more to our family, I'd have thought they were mad." Garrett's arms tightened around her. "More? Are you thinking about the orphanage again?" They had discussed returning to Fort Worth after the new year, to see if there were other children who might fit into their growing family. The idea had come from James, who had mentioned a young boy at the orphanage who had trouble walking due to a club foot and was often overlooked by potential parents. "I am," Sarah confirmed, "though I was thinking we might look closer to home first." Reverend Simmons mentioned there's a widow in the next county who's dying of consumption. She has a baby, not quite a year old, and no family to take it. Garrett was quiet for a moment, considering. A baby would be a big change. Different from James and Emma, who can already do so much for themselves. "I know," Sarah acknowledged, "but I keep thinking about that poor woman, knowing she's leaving her child alone in the world, and about that baby who deserves a family who'll love him or her just as much as any other child." Garrett pressed a kiss to her temple. "You've already decided, haven't you?" Sarah smiled ruefully. "Not without talking to you first, and to James and Emma. They should have a say in growing our family too." "True enough," Garrett agreed, "though I suspect they'll be thrilled." Emma's been playing with her dolls and pretending they're real babies for weeks now. The next morning, after presents had been opened and exclaimed over, and a breakfast of special Christmas biscuits had been consumed, Sarah and Garrett broached the subject with the children. "How would you two feel about adding another member to our family?" Garrett asked as they sat around the fire, Emma playing with her new doll and James examining his chess set. Both children looked up surprised. "Like another kid?" James asked. Sarah nodded. "There's a baby who needs a home. A little one who has no parents to care for it." Emma's eyes widened. "A real baby. Here. If we all agree it's what we want," Garrett clarified. "This would be a change for all of us. Babies need a lot of care and attention." James looked thoughtful. "Would it be my brother or sister, just like Emma is?" "Exactly like that," Sarah assured him. "Another Vance child, equal in every way." Emma bounced in her seat. "I vote yes. I want a baby in the family." James was more measured but no less certain. "I think we should do it," he said solemnly. Our first Pa always said that those who can help others should. We have plenty of room and, well, we're a good family, aren't we? We could give a baby a good life." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes at the boy's words. In the 5 months since bringing James and Emma home, she had watched James gradually shed some of the protective shell he'd built around himself after his parents' death. To hear him speak now of their responsibility to help others, to confidently assert that they were a good family, filled her with pride and joy. "We are a good family," Garrett agreed, his voice slightly rough with emotion. "One of the best. And it looks like we're going to get even better with a new addition." The baby, a boy they named Matthew, joined their family in late January. His mother, grateful that her child would be raised by a loving family, passed away peacefully just days after signing the adoption papers. Matthew was a robust 10-month-old with a shock of dark hair and curious brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Emma was enchanted, spending hours entertaining the baby with songs and games. James, initially more reserved, soon developed a protective streak toward his new brother, carefully supervising Emma's interactions and proudly demonstrating how to hold and care for the infant properly. As winter melted into spring, the Vance family settled into a new rhythm that accommodated their youngest member. Sarah, who had once feared she would never experience motherhood, now found herself with 3 children who filled her days with chaos, joy, and a love so profound it sometimes took her breath away. The townspeople of Hillsborough gradually shifted their attitude as they witnessed the happiness of the Vance family. The whispers about Sarah's barrenness faded, replaced by comments on how well the adopted children were thriving under her care. Even Mrs. Henderson eventually thawed, particularly after Emma charmed her with a curtsy and perfect manners during a church social. One warm evening in early May, as Sarah sat on the porch swing nursing Matthew while James and Emma played a game of catch in the yard, Garrett joined her, settling beside her on the swing. "I got a letter today," he said casually, though something in his tone caught Sarah's attention. "From the orphanage in Fort Worth." Sarah looked up from Matthew's contented face. "Oh, what did it say?" "They've got a pair of twin girls, 3 years old. Their parents were killed in a stagecoach robbery last month." Garrett watched James showing Emma how to throw the ball with a better technique. The letter mentioned that the girls have nowhere to go, and they remembered how we said we might be interested in taking siblings who needed to stay together. Sarah's heart quickened. "Twins? Girls?" Garrett nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Red-haired, according to Mrs. Blackburn. Spirited little things, apparently." "How soon could we go see them?" Sarah asked, already mentally rearranging the household to accommodate 2 more children. Garrett laughed, the sound full and rich. "I thought you might say that. I've already written back saying we'll come next week. Simon can handle things here for a few days. Thought we might take James and Emma with us this time, let them help decide if these girls would fit into our family." Sarah leaned against him, her free hand finding his. "5 children," she said wonderingly. "If we take the twins, we'll have 5 children, Garrett, more than I ever dreamed possible." "And room for more if the right ones come along," Garrett replied, his voice soft but certain. "Our family may not have come together in the way we first imagined, but I wouldn't change a thing. Not one single thing." As if to punctuate his words, Matthew finished nursing and looked up at them both, a milky smile revealing his 2 new bottom teeth. Across the yard, James let out a whoop of triumph as Emma finally made a perfect throw, and the ball sailed through the air in a graceful arc before landing squarely in his outstretched hands. "Neither would I," Sarah whispered, her heart full to bursting. This is exactly the family we were meant to have. In the years that followed, the Vance family continued to grow. The twins, Abigail and Amanda, joined them that summer, bringing their particular brand of mischief and laughter to the household. 2 years later, they took in Daniel, a serious 12-year-old boy who had been living on the streets of Dallas after escaping an abusive situation. And the year after that, baby Grace came to them, abandoned on the church steps in Hillsborough and brought directly to the Vance home by Reverend Simmons, who knew without asking that Sarah and Garrett would open their hearts to one more child in need. As their family expanded, so did their home. Garrett added wings to the house, ensuring each child had their own space while maintaining the close-knit feeling that defined their family. The Vance ranch thrived, with James gradually taking on more responsibility as he grew into a young man with a head for business and a compassionate heart. Emma developed a talent for teaching, eventually helping Sarah with the education of her younger siblings, and later, the children of ranch hands and neighboring families who came to learn in the schoolroom Garrett built on their property. Through all the changes, all the challenges and triumphs, Sarah and Garrett remained a united front, their love for each other and their children the foundation upon which everything else was built. The whispers about Sarah's barrenness that had once caused her such pain became a distant memory, replaced by admiration for the remarkable family she and Garrett had created together. 10 years after bringing James and Emma home, on a golden autumn afternoon, the entire Vance family gathered on the porch for a photograph to commemorate Garrett's 40th birthday. As the photographer arranged them in careful rows, Garrett and Sarah in the center, surrounded by their 7 children ranging in age from 16-year-old James to 4-year-old Grace, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "Everything all right, love?" Garrett murmured, noticing her emotion. Sarah nodded, smiling through her tears. "Just happy, overwhelmingly happy." "Hold that smile," the photographer called from behind his camera. "This is a moment worth remembering." As the shutter clicked, capturing the image of their family for posterity, Sarah thought of that devastating day in the doctor's office, of the cruel whispers and the pain of believing she had failed as a woman. How strange and wonderful that what had seemed like her greatest sorrow had led them here, to a family larger and more loving than she could have ever imagined. They had built their family another way, and in doing so had created something extraordinary, a testament to the truth that love, not blood, makes a family. And in the end, that was all that mattered.